Am I ready?
I don't know. Are you ready? You don't
I'm
look
not
ready.
really sure. So much has happened in like the past 20 minutes. I don't even know what to tell you right now. I am like, my thoughts are like so scattered. And I have to go through 5 episodes of Eva right now too, so that was like writing a dissertation.
It is a lot of episodes. A little closer to the edge.
Let me see.
I think it should a little closer.
Oh yeah, a little closer.
Like practically in there.
Just, yeah, you should move it like 3 more inches.
I hope that's not poison.
That doesn't have a thumb.
Oh my god. Is that good?
Yeah, and then just cut out the leaves over there, like just, and that'll be perfect. You could see into the woods. That's, good luck!
She hates us. Oh!
Ow!
Oh my god!
You took me
Why
out!
are you in my way! Oh.
Oh my god, what just happened?
Why did you bump into me?
What are you talking about? You took me out! Thanks, Elaine.
You're welcome.
Okay. Alright. Hi everyone and welcome back to Media Psyche.
Did you write notes on every episode? You did, didn't you?
My version of notes is, you know, I don't know what you call it. Start from episode 7. No, I'm kidding. This is not how we're gonna do this. All right.
If you have notes for every episode, we can do it episode by episode.
No. It's all kind of lumped together, so it does work. I already feel winded, and it's just by like thinking about things.
You're winded from thinking. I have nothing to say.
Look, everyone has issues, me included. I feel winded just thinking about things. Is that okay?
I guess Evangelion could wind one.
All right. Episodes 7 through 11. It's basically the introduction of Asuka. And boy, was it very loud. This arc was a very stark difference in feel between what I've seen so far in Evangelion. I mean, up until now, well, up until before like episode 7, episodes were quiet, reflective, introspective, and introverted. And then we went into this whole like feel of like extroversion, competition, even sexual aggressiveness. And wow, I just want to say I felt like I was watching something completely different just by the introduction of this one person. So up until like, you know, episode 7, we had this, the main focus was really on Shinji, and Shinji's presentation was really this quiet inward misery that we experienced from him, this quiet inward depression. And Asuka comes along and it's this loud desperation. In one word, I would say that Asuka is just pretty much just tragic. I see her as being a very, very tragic character for so many reasons. I could see from a standpoint where she has all these strengths. She's like, you know, go get it, you know, go fight the battle. And she appears to be very strong and courageous, right? But then she has this very like regressed side to her that's like very childlike. She calls out for her mom too while she's like sleepwalking. Her issues are very childlike as well. It's always this competition to make sure that she's recognized and she gets all this attention. And you know, she wants someone to be able to see and acknowledge her. in this very loud way though, and she makes it known. Like she wants Kaji to be there so she could, make sure that he sees what she does, and she gets the praise from him and the recognition from him. I mean, she's basically identified him as her important attachment. So the comparison I make is this. It's hard not to compare Asuka and Shinji. They both present with, from their background history that they have issues with attachment. Asuka has, it seems like she's been estranged from her mother. I mean, she only talked about her mom very briefly in this, while she was, talking in her sleep. But you don't really know much about her background history. And then the person that she finds meaning with is Kaji. Who is he basically? Her, is he basically, the equivalent to, Shinji's Misato?
Maybe, but Kaji is
He seems more independent than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their relationship is, and again, I don't know that it ever becomes very clear. But maybe I thought he was just there because he was going over, he was bringing that over on the ship with them. But it seems like they've known each other a long time.
Yeah, since, probably even, Germany, right?
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
So this is Asuka, right? You can see that she's also had some attachment issues since she was little. And Shinji's definitely had the same. He's had attachment issues as well, since he was little with an absent father. I don't know what Asuka's situation is with her mother. I don't know if she was absent or if she is no longer in the picture because of a tragic incident. Can't tell. But what's interesting is that both people start off with a sort of similar experience where their significant attachment figures are not present in their life, right? And they both turn out to have different personality outcomes, different personality traits. Shinji internalizes all of this. I mean, but it really depends, right? Because his context is a little bit different. He's experienced a lot of abandonment issues, invalidation, and just, he just didn't seem important to anyone at all. Asuka, at least she was important to Kaji for a while, it seems. But who knows, again, what the quality of her relationship with her mother is. But it's she's constantly striving for praise, for attention. And just as and it's this feature of narcissism where when you have narcissistic qualities, you're always striving for someone to praise you. You do the best you can to get people to acknowledge you and praise you. So she has these narcissistic qualities. Shinji, on the other hand, suffers with depression and really has turned that inward. And he just kind of sort of passively hopes that his father would recognize him one day. Asuka just continues to assert herself to be able to get the needs that she needs met, which is that affirmation all the time. And she's only 14, right? And she does it by even sexualizing her body constantly. Let's talk about Asuka's personality. Let's talk about her communication style.
Yelling, loud.
She uses a lot of double bind communication. So basically, she sets people up by giving people conflicting messages where either way they respond, they're doomed to fail. So she'll give conflicting messages or, sort of make conflicting statements. And you know what? No matter how you respond to her, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I'll give you an example. If I could find this example. Wait, it's in my head. Okay.
You You have an example, but you didn't write it down.
It's in there. I have like 5 pages of notes. It's like writing a dissertation. It's like, okay, so when they're fighting right out in sea, and Asuka says to Shinji, like, do something, right? Because like she couldn't, she's kind of lost now. She couldn't figure out like what to do after something happened. Can't remember right now, but something happened, and she's like, do something. Let me look for this example.
Yeah, because I can't think of it. She was doing that the whole time.
I know, but here's a pretty clear example of a double bind. So they're in her mech together. Ava, I shouldn't call it a mech, but they're in their Ava together, and she's like, "You're the third child, aren't you? Do something." So he does. He takes control, and this is when they were like stuck in that like the angel's mouth.
Oh yeah.
Right. And he does. He takes control. Then what does Asuka do? She starts beating him up for taking control and handling the situation. Now this is what Shinji learns now. It's like, wow, okay, so she told me to do something, I'm doing something, and then I'm now doing this something and I'm getting beat up for it. There's a consequence either way. If he were not to do something, there would have been some sort of criticism. Well, you're the third child, how can I sort of imagine her saying, how much more useless can you be? Because after all, she thinks that tamed men are useless. By the way, what does that even mean? I mean, aren't tamed men more helpful? It's a joke. It's a joke. But like, what does that even mean, Were they supposed to be like reckless? It's such a terrible comment, but...
And why is a 14-year-old saying this?
And why is a 14-year-old saying this? Another time that Asuka does this whole double-bind communication is when she is preparing to do the magma diving. And she is given her suit. Her Ava's given this bubble suit as well for protection. She gets in it, and because she does not look good in it, what does she say? I quit. This is the sort of thing Shinji is for. Because she doesn't look good in the suit. It makes her look fat. Even though it's supposed to be a protective suit. So her being so highly aware of her appearance as a 14-year-old, although I think 14-year-olds these days are very highly concerned with their appearance, it's not healthy.
And Kaji doesn't help because he's like, oh, I thought I was going to get to see Asuka's figure or whatever, and that's what makes her run out or whatever.
He's another one that I have a problem with. Because although as much as he says that, they go swimsuit shopping, and what does he say to her?
What did he say?
You're a little too young for that.
Oh,
like, what is wrong with everybody? How are you supposed to keep anything straight? So you guys, if you guys are confused in your interpersonal relationships, see if they're giving you mixed messages, because this is really stressful and anxiety provoking and producing. Yeah. It's highly anxiety producing because you don't know how you're supposed to be with some people in relationships. You cannot be consistent with them because they expect you to read their mind and know how to react perfectly. But then in double bind situations, there is no perfect response. You will fail. That's not on you. I swear that is not on you. It's not your fault. So yes, so Asuka soon. She says, I quit. This is the kind of stuff Shinji is for. So then who volunteers? Rei. Rei volunteers and says, okay, I'll do it. And what does Asuka do? She slaps her hand. So you don't want to do this. You quit because you're going to be in a fat suit. But then you don't want someone else to do it, even though you basically said you wanted someone else to do it. This is a personality disorder. And it's cultivated somehow. She has been cultivated to be egocentric, only self-focused, where she has to always be the one who's right, the one who has to only do the things that she can do to get praise. And anytime something fails, and she blames someone else because she can't accept responsibility for her own failures, because what would that mean for her? It would mean ultimately then she would internalize then that she is a failure, and she doesn't have the ego strength to take that in. Her ego is way too fragile for her able to accept any wrongdoing, any fault. And she has to use her body in a sexual way to get attention, to continue getting her needs met, to continue feeling like she has importance. While in that same breath, she criticizes other people about giving notice to her body. And she sets up this whole thing herself. Episodes 7 through 11 was basically a one-girl show, in my opinion. Every scenario where she's in, it's her doing and undoing, her doing and undoing. And had she not been a character in this arc, I don't imagine that there would have been as many conflicts. It's making me think of like that other scene with Asuka and Shinji where they are trying to do the synchronized dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't do it. She's like, it's Shinji's fault, basically. Like, it's because of him that we're failing. Misato. She's great. Misato's like, all right, well, Rei, why don't you go ahead and do it? And they're perfect. Rei and Shinji are in sync. And that's a moment where it is so undeniable that Asuka's faced with sort of this glimpse that she is basically the factor that's causing trouble. It's like just a glimpse. She gets upset. She gets upset. That's like the epitome of someone who cannot accept responsibility for their own shortcomings. And that's also tragic. Because imagine living your whole life with that kind of mentality. There could be no change. And every interpersonal relationship you'll be in will be the exact replica of that same pattern over and over and over and over again. Because she can't see that she also contributes to things that don't turn out well, and she blames someone else who it wasn't even their fault, and that wasn't the cause of things not going well. The problem doesn't get solved. The relationship between two people will always be negative and hostile, and it will repeat itself in every relationship that she will have with other people. Unless, of course, that person knows how to deflect it well. Or if, like, they're like Kaji and it won't matter what Kaji says to her. Because she puts him on a pedestal. It's tragic that this is how she continues to get praise. And she just can't live in a more realistic reality where people have different strengths. And she can't acknowledge anyone else's. It does remind me of myself.
Really? You don't say.
Absolutely. Although I can hear your sarcasm. Of course
Whatever do you mean?
Of course it reminds me of myself. It's so interesting that, like, you know, I've perfectly adopted both Shinji's and Asuka's personalities in my younger years. Like I became a product of these two personalities merged because of my own upbringing and what I learned. And like when I look at this now, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I was like this. Oh my God, I can't believe this is how I communicated. Oh my God, you know, this is why my relationships with people were so exhausting. And I thought it was always their fault. It was always their fault. And looking back on it now, after having really grown and understood the difference between what's healthy and normal, and what's unhealthy and abnormal, and being on this other side, it's like, I was really like that. And it's hard to sort of admit that because there's some element of shame to admitting that. But then I can give myself this grace and say, I didn't know any better. I really didn't know any better. It was through years of like going through this same pattern over and over again, and having friends who called me out on it every time, and then having the luxury and time and also the opportunities that I did to really reflect on myself, that I was able to recognize how I really was and be able to see it clearly and not through rose-colored glasses. And that process took years. It took years. It took dedication, especially with Elaine, because Elaine was definitely my scapegoat. And this is why I say that we're like, you know, best friends and mortal enemies, because when I look back on our relationship, oh my God. I mean, we do have differences, and those differences are just sort of, the differences that we do still have are within like the normal range of differences that you have with, you know, people. But my God, the kinds of differences we had back then couldn't even scale. It's sort of like on the scale of Asuka. So I readily admit that. I felt ashamed of it, you know. Once I realized that this is how I was, I felt ashamed of it. But then I also understood that, you know, again, how would I have known?
About never underestimating, you know, an animal's ability to adapt to their environment. Shinji adapts well as much as he's completely socially whatever, he adapts well to any person. And that's something that I really appreciate about him. When he runs after Asuka, when she goes to the kombini or whatever, and she's shoving food into her mouth, and she's just ranting about how angry she is and how she's gonna show Misato or whatever. Shinji smiles at her, like he's looking upon her, and sort of, it reminds me of how I kind of used to look at you, where you sort of all of a sudden realize this is just kind of how this person expresses what it is that they're feeling. And you can either take it seriously, or you can kind of understand that it's hiding something or masking something. But what you appreciate about Asuka in that moment is just her resilience, her ridiculous level of determination. While she's shoving food in her mouth, and she's just like, I'm gonna. It's a kind of that attitude that you can admire if you don't take it seriously. If you take it seriously, then it's like, oh my God, you know, like, and that's kind of like how it was with you. Recognizing what was your strengths and your resilience and everything that you became to survive your circumstances growing up, and seeing how that kind of manifests itself, and kind of being, this is just how she is. And there's something to admire in that. And that moment with Shinji reminded me of you, and kind of that sort of like, okay, I get it. I understand this person. And Shinji's very good at doing that. I mean, that's certainly how he survives, but like, he adapts well to his friends. His friends are both very different. The dude who beat him up and the dude with the glasses.
Yeah.
He could sit there at the fire with him just as comfortably as he could sit at the table with Ritsuka and Misato, right?
Yeah.
He's very adaptable because that's how he survives, but it's also a very good trait to have.
Absolutely. And I actually wrote that somewhere here, and I gotta look for it. And it was like, Shinji continues to be my favorite character. Shinji continues to... Shinji is someone I adore. Quite a bit. Because despite his circumstances, he's extremely complex, right? And you have to understand him in order to be able to appreciate all the complexities that he shows you. He is like, he's... And I say it because, you know, like at first glance, right? Like, he's just sort of like this wimpy, whiny kid. But is he really, though? He is receptive. He is accepting of other people. And like, he has moments where he's just... He sees like these moments in other people, and he like accepts them, and he smiles, and he adores them. Like, he has these moments where he does, right? And I don't know where I wrote this. But, and despite the fact that his attachments were not really like that secure and that like great, he begins to learn, or begins to accept and easily adapt into coming into these relationships. Like, you know that scene where he's, episode 7, where he's like, gets out of the helicopter with Misato in his hand, and he's running towards, you know, the human-made Ava.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? And he's running so then he could place Misato on this Ava, right? I don't know what that thing is called. It's called a human work. That's the name of the title.
The fake robot that they made, yeah.
And he gets her there. And the last second, she succeeds in shutting down this machine. And Shinji says, "You're alive. I'm so glad you're all right. That you're really all right." And he has a significant relief. Unlike Atsuka, who's sort of petty and wants vengeance constantly because she has this sort of sense of justice where if anyone outdoes her, then she wants them to struggle and suffer. To Shinji it doesn't matter. To Shinji, no matter what the circumstances, that person is still human, and he has this compassion for them. And that strength is something that is so admirable because he's not petty in that way. He still sees everyone as being equally human, as being people that he ends up, caring about in this humane way. And for a lot of people who feel angry and slighted and things are just unjust, you don't see people like that. It's kind of like Jakar in Babylon 5. He doesn't see people as or other life forms as having he doesn't have compassion for them, right? He thinks that everything's about justice and it doesn't really matter. Even when he blew up Burgish 3, well, you know what? It doesn't matter. So, but Shinji has this compassion that I just absolutely admire. That despite his circumstances, he is so genuine and so in touch with what it means to be human. And that's such a great strength for him. So, let's talk about Shinji. I don't like how, Asuka really brought out this pettiness in him. I'll put that out there. Because of Asuka, he ends up arguing with her and constantly being in these petty arguments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't blame him for it because he has to fight for his battles. He has to fight for himself because he's someone who has had no one else to defend him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was alone the whole time, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't blame him for that. I just want to put that out there. So, but overall though, I like moments of reflection that Shinji has. I like that he's reflective. I like that he's introspective and he has these thoughts. He's always asking himself these questions or having these moments where he's looking within.
Doesn't he ask Asuka too? He's always inquiring how everybody feels about what they're doing. Have you ever wondered what the angels are, kind of? And no one seems to care but him. Everyone's whatever, you just shoot him, But he's always did you ever wonder this, or did you ever he's the only one thinking about what they're doing and what these Evas are and why do we call them he's the only one asking questions like you ask. Legitimately. Asuka's who cares?
Yeah, you just fight them.
Right.
Yeah, I wrote that down. What are you, stupid? Who knows what they think? Who knows what the angels think? But isn't that really important? I mean, wouldn't you think that it was important to know what other people think in order to be able to figure out how to solve a problem even?
Or if you're even on the right side of things. It's oh, they're coming to destroy us, so they must be bad. Well, why are they coming to destroy us? Why do they seem to know exactly where Nerve headquarters is, and why are they always targeting us?
Right. Right. This is where psychology is sort of this makes me think about what the practice of psychology is exactly, right? A lot of people have issues. A lot of people have interpersonal relationship problems. And let's say people come into therapy because of things they were taught or interpersonal problems, and it's but they're not quite sure what the root of that problem is. And you have some therapists who are only focused on like just solving the symptoms, kind of like how our conventional medicine is practicing these days, with just putting a band-aid on a problem and letting them go, and they come back with 5 other problems and you put a band-aid on each one of them, right? That method never works, because you come back with those 5 other problems after you left with one. Figuring out the root of the problem is going to get you to the most accurate solution. So Misato's a slob, right? She is just exactly who she is. And then when she needs to be what she needs to be, she cleans up really well. But no matter what, she takes her job seriously, and it doesn't matter, right? So you have this whole full side of her, right? She reminds me of how, you know, before I like really came into myself, how I really kind of compartmentalized myself. I used to feel like I had to just be one thing. I had to have this facade of just being one thing. Like, meaning, how do I even explain this? Like, I had this rigid idea in my head, like back then when, that I had to only, in order to present myself a certain way, I'd have to wear clothing only from like a certain stores, for example. I had to make sure that I pulled off a certain image. I cleaned my house every week. And everyone else had to like have the same beliefs I did in order to be a sort of like this perfect person, because perfectionism was something that I strive to maintain. It was after my burnout, when I like really burned out, that I sort of like let things go. And then slowly I kind of came into myself, where I was figuring out who I really am and what was important to me and not important to me, and developing my own values and my own beliefs, rather than having adopted these pre-made ones that my mom instilled in me, with like these rigid, conventional Korean cultural ideals. It's called foreclosure. If you like think about like career paths, foreclosure is basically where you don't do your own experimentation or exploration of like your life, and you just sort of accept the one that your parents laid out for you. Your father wants you to be a doctor, you went on to be a doctor. I did that. I accepted and adopted my mother's beliefs about what it meant to be a Korean female, and all the, you know, expectations that came with being a Korean female, which I've talked about before. And I carried that with me. And then I realized I never really came into myself. I never developed what was important to me, because to derail from that, I felt guilty. It felt bad, like I was like committing a sin. It felt awkward. Like, one of the things that I never did growing up as a kid was get a lot of new clothing. And when I earned money, it was really hard for me to go out and buy stuff for myself. It was so hard to spend money on clothing. So seeing Misato was like, she is exactly who she is, and she doesn't care, because she's comfortable in her own skin. And now Shinji's the only one who sees this side of her. And of course her friends as well, sort of. But she's comfortable in her own skin, which is why she can be exactly how she is and have all these sides to her that make her who she is. And that's absolutely wonderful. Whereas I was so like rigidly like, oh my God, like detailing my life to make sure that like I completed everything I needed to complete in order to fit into the mold that I was told I needed to be shaped into. And for that, I like Misato.
Mm-hmm.
I very much like Misato because she's always, she's herself and she's always trying to be a better person too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for Shinji.
She has a life and she has a job.
Mm-hmm.
And she has herself and then she has a role.
Mm-hmm.
And she's amazing at her role.
Yeah.
She gets, even like in the midst of whatever, she's just like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. That's crazy. I know, but it'll probably work. You know, I'm like, don't worry, I'll take responsibility for it. Do this, do this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she is a great commander.
She is.
But she's also a person.
You know, and she's, you know, in the beginning, like, it was a little awkward with Shinji. It was. But, like, the way their relationship has developed and the way she's kind of come into, like, adopting, you know, this kid into, you know, her home, including, like, Pen, you know, like, it's great. Like, she wakes up one morning and Shinji's just criticizing her for being a slob or whatever, and she's sitting on the chair eating that toast, like, hanging from her mouth. And she doesn't care, but she's okay with it. She doesn't take him seriously. She doesn't take him seriously in the fact, like, not in a way where she's invalidating how he feels, but it's like, but that's just who she is. And she's sitting there looking really cute, eating her toast. Love it. Love that scene. Some of the moments that I liked.
Okay.
So the angels attacking the ships in water, and Asuka sees this, and she realizes that there's an angel.
Mm-hmm.
And she turns to the side. She's like, "Chance."
And I love that Misato's like, yeah, go! Like, she's like, just grabs the thing out of the guy. Yeah, go, get on there!
Look, she's more than a Boy Scout leader, all right?
The one thing
Don't mess with her.
That I was thinking of when you were talking about Asuka at the beginning, when you said that she, you know, she dragged Shinji into these petty arguments for like 5 episodes, but she does bring out a side of him that is really interesting. Like, when they're fighting together and she's saying whatever and he's like, you know, don't talk about me, you rookie, and he's just firing. Like, there's no stress and there's no... He's out there fighting with enthusiasm and with even like a sense of, not positivity, but you know what I mean? Like, where there isn't so much a weight on him. Like, he's bantering with Asuka and firing his gun, and like, she brings out this side of him that's very interesting.
You're absolutely correct.
And at the same time, when you're so kind of turned off, well, at least I was, so sort of turned off by Asuka at the very beginning when you first meet her. Mm-hmm. But when she comes out of that thing with the Eva and she's grabbed the sail or whatever it is, I don't know where she got that thing from, as a cape, and she lands on the ship. Like, we're so used to seeing Shinji barely managing in his Eva, or Rei getting mauled by hers or whatever. Seeing an Eva work the way it's supposed to work, and the grace and skill with which she leaps from ship to ship and slides into that thing, like, it's all of a sudden like, oh, this is like a whole different, like, she's piloting that thing, and she's having a blast piloting that thing.
Oh my God, is she?
With the cape, and she was ready to go, and it just gives you a different feel for what piloting an Eva can look like when that is something that you love to do, and you're good at it, which is so, you know, drastically different from what we've experienced with Shinji, which is all this trauma and all this, you know, terrible, you know, pain and everything. But Asuka's is very different, and so it kind of like, oh, whoa! It's like, it's all of a sudden, it's like, wow, this is this is cool, you know?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, as much as like it was kind of like tragic and exhausting to sort of see Asuka's constant need to be like egotistical, egocentric.
Validated.
Yeah, and like just, gloating all the time, because that gets a little exhausting, because it's like it takes away from sometimes a real issue, or just basically the whole complete picture. Her being in that Eva was something that, like, her taking control and her being courageous was something that, like, I admired about her, and that was her strength. That was what made her likable to me. And it balanced out like these elements of her where, I would even say is my own projection of my feelings of her, right? Wasn't so great. But like, even when she like eventually even went into the magma to like go get that, what was that dive called? She even like went in enthusiastically.
Split something entry or something, yeah.
Stroke entry. I don't know. But like the way like she, like she goes in and there isn't fear. And I don't know if it's because it's trumped by what she expects, which is that ultimate praise at the end, that she's so driven and motivated. But at the same time, I really do feel like she was passionate about being in Aniva. And she's smart.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely smart, right? I mean, that whole way she took care of that angel in the magma, like the thermal expansion idea just came up, and she on the fly took care of that angel. And that scene where the last of that cable breaks and she's sinking into the magma, she says, I think that's the end. And
there isn't any fear at all.
There was no fear, and there was this quiet acceptance. There wasn't desperation. And in that I also found sadness. Because, for someone who just wants to be loved, essentially, she was also accepting of, her death. Yeah, that was a very, very positive and, a powerful moment for Asuka, for when I watched it. I need a minute.
You got upset?
A little.
Yeah.
Just because it's really touching.
It's touching.
It's sad.
She's fine with dying?
No, touching is not the word. It's tragic. It's just tragic. Touching is not the word.
Yeah, she was perfectly okay with it. Oh, I guess that's it, kind of thing.
And I would have thought that, like, for someone who was like that, like, constantly wanting to be a leader and constantly wanting to, be recognized and do things to be recognized, that but then she would have died a hero.
I don't even think she saw it like that.
No, she didn't. She didn't. It was just simply acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Another shining moment for Asuka for me was when the three of them problem solved and she came up with a plan to like defeat that angel. And she actually twice she recognized Shinji. One was during that fight when when they fought that angel, and she smiled. She's like, basically, she's like, I owed you one from before. She smiled when that turned out to be successful, and Shinji was the one to like be able to like save them. But then also when she was drowning and that last cable broke and Shinji saved her, and the way she looked up at him was like, endearing. It was she had a smile on her face.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how Shinji is reliable. He is reliable no matter what. Oh wait, I had other favorite moments.
You did?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When Misato was on her business trip or whatever, and Asuka and Shinji are like sleeping in 2 different rooms, and Asuka opens the door and Shinji like plops asleep. That was so fast. That was so fast. I love that.
Oh, man.
That cracked me up. At the very end of episode 11, as the 3 of them are sitting on the grass looking up at the stars, Ray says, "Man has always feared the darkness. He scrapes away at it with fire. He creates life by diminishing the darkness." I felt like it was another poetic way of like what it means to be a therapist, for what it means to be a psychologist, and for what it means for me and how I live my life and how I strive to live my life. It was very poetic in that, you know, we have a lot of darkness in our world, and a lot of people are struggling with their own inner demons, with dark and cloudy and negative thoughts, and how we're always trying to scrape it away with a little fire, with any kind of light that we try to like grasp at. Some people like with much more struggle than others, because ultimately the goal is to diminish that darkness and bring into it light. I am excited to continue moving forward with Evangelion. I love the characters in this anime. It's great. It's great. Everyone teaches me a little bit about something about myself each time I watch, and that's really kind of really amazing. I hope it resonates with you guys as well, in these positive ways. Thank you everyone for watching, and until next time, see ya!